It's nearly the end of the year, and as always, it's been a huge year for advocacy. Trish Grant, always such a thrill to talk to you, and I know that you've been really, really super busy this year. What are some of the key things that you're thinking about as this year is coming to a close?
It's been a very, very busy year, but also quite an exciting one in terms of the work that we do, which is mostly around looking at what government's doing for disabled people, young and old, and their families. So there's a bit of hope and good news to report on.
Tell us all the good news.
Yeah. The first piece of good news, I think, is the announcement by government around the Ministry for Disabled People. And this is something that IHC has been asking for a number of years now, well, actually at least a couple of decades. We're saying that disability isn't necessarily a health issue, and it needs to an approach which is partnership with disabled people and families in developing policy and implementing disability support services. So that's happening.
And that is a huge win to you too, for all those, as you say, decades.
Yeah.
What will it mean going forward for us?
Well, as always, the devil's in the detail, and we don't know enough detail to know what it means. And of course, for IHC, we're particularly concerned about what it means for people with intellectual learning disability and their families, often who are closely involved in being able to access support and services, and also wanting to have a say in government policy settings. So what I've done, along with a lot of family membership organisations and carers, is to write a letter to government saying, how will families be able to work in partnership with the new ministry, and what are the mechanisms available that family voices can be heard? What we know is that about over half of the people who receive government-funded disability services are people with intellectual disability. And a high proportion of those are under 25. So we need to really be able to have a say, and because of the wisdom that exists amongst families and what they've learned about what makes a good life for their family members. So it's really important that they're able to have an in. And along with that announcement was, of course, the national rollout of the Enabling Good Lives project and implementation right across New Zealand. So that's fantastic. People have been asking that for a long time. And of course, government's learned a lot from the rollout in Canterbury, in Manawatu, and also in Hamilton. And it's great that it tends to work differently in different places, because what we know is not all communities are the same. It kind of really matches those calls for greater choice, flexibility and control for disabled people in the families, and being able to get the support that works for them, because they have such fantastic underpinning principles. Mana enhancing, mainstream first, all of the good stuff that creates great lives for people, and is about that sense of having a personal freedom to access what you need for a good life, and not having to be as tragic as possible to get what you need, and having to choose from a menu of choices. So that's fantastic news, but we need to keep watching. We need to keep engaging on the detail. But I think it's a really brave move from government.
That is all really positive news. And yes, as you say, the devil's in the detail, and there are always discussions about consistency and funding issues.
Yeah.
And funding. But it's pretty good.
What we know is that people with intellectual learning disability have very poor health outcomes. So we need to keep an eye on what's happening in the transformation of the health system, so that the access and equity issues improve, because we still know that people with intellectual disability die about 25 years off before the general population, and generally from preventable and treatable conditions. So we've been pointing that out for a long time, and we want that, of course, to improve.
It's a very damning statistic.
It really is. It really, really is. And it's something that is shameful, really, for New Zealand. Other countries just across the ditch, they have a dedicated work program, as has we have had in New Zealand, but no real outcomes from that work program. So we're wanting things like annual funded health checks. We're wanting a much better response, as I said, from primary and secondary health providers.
I can hear that you're busy, but there's just one more thing. When we're talking about quality of life and improving quality of life, tell me about the new dashboard.
IFC Advocacy has tried to keep tabs on all of the quality of life indicators for this population group, and we've done that and produced various reports over the years. But we're actually Shara Turner, who's an advocate in my team, she's developed this fantastic idea of having at a glance being able to see, are things improving or are things not improving or staying the same. So it's across all of the main quality of life indicators like health, well-being, access to education, employment, poverty, those things. So we'll be setting that up, running an annual survey, and getting people's views on that, and looking at government monitoring these things and coming up with an annual report so we can track it in a very visual and simple way year by year, because this population group has not enjoyed the same quality of life for too long. And I think it's something that we need a really active and simple but effective monitoring of. So that's what we're going to embark on in next year, 2022.
This is all really powerful stuff, and it's largely due to your power and integrity, Trish. We owe you a lot. We always have done, and we always, well, look at you there though, all the time, thinking ahead, thinking about how to make things better, monitoring. It's all so good. And we have chatted quite a lot, and I can hear you're busy, and I'd like to talk to you again because we've got a list of things that we haven't actually got.
No, but can I just say one thing more? Thank you. It's just that currently government's put out for consultation a thing about restraint for children and young people in schools. And I'd really encourage families who are connected to your platform to have a say. Government has listened to what families have said and other advocates and have put out these guidelines for consultation. So I'd really encourage families to have a look at them and have a say, feedback to those guidelines, because it's important stuff. But for me, I'd like to see restraint absolutely eliminated, because I think that, and for adults, government has a goal towards that for people in prisons and in places of detention, but we don't have it for children and young people. There was a wonderful report released by Paula Tesorero, the Human Rights Commissioner Disability, just a couple of weeks ago, on the abuse and neglect and violence that disabled people experience. And we know that disabled people generally are about 3 times as likely to experience those things as the general population. But that's another matter. I
was going to say, on that happy note, let's
yeah, but isn't it great
about how we can change that?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Let's change
that. Called safeguarding, and families need support, disabled people need support, and safeguarding arrangements that enhance the quality of their life experience, not detract from it. So, I think it's great that all of these things are coming up to the surface so we can have these really hard conversations, but important ones.
You are a powerhouse, and I want to say inspiration, even though it sounds trite, but it's not. We mean it, and we love you for giving us the opportunity to be heard, because you're right, it's not always easy as families to find the time or the energy to keep pushing ahead with these things. So you've provided a forum and an opportunity for us with all of your hard work. This is a long chat, Trish, but it's been a good roundup of the year. Please have a wonderful festive period, and come back and talk to us next year.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing my 3 granddaughters and on Christmas Day. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Okay, thank you.